Right, hello everybody, 𝗕𝗫𝗧𝗥𝗍𝗬 from FourFourTwo. Sorry, I just got to set all the cameras up before I start these things now. Lee Carsley, he's the England manager for this weekend and potentially even longer in the future, and I think that's really cool. The question of who is going to ultimately replace Gareth Southgate in the long term will run and run and run until it is obviously answered by the FA. But until then, Lee Carsley is the man steering England through both qualification and the Nations League. Now, of course, whoever gets the England job will be right here on this channel doing a what will X person's England squad ultimately look like video. But the thing is, that'll just be guesswork because national football's really weird and you can't have the kind of players you want. You've got to make the best of what you got. So it's really difficult to tell you what a certain person's England squad will be unless they have already literally managed half this squad. Right, so with that intro, got a big what are you on about out of you. Lee Carsley was the England under-21 manager as recently as the most recent tournament. He guided them to a frankly stunning tournament performance that saw them go all the way, not concede a single goal and win the bloody trophy. And in that squad was James Trafford, Levi Colwill, Morgan Gibbs-White, Emile Smith-Rowe, Anthony Gordon, 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗥𝗔-𝗧𝗜𝗍𝗂, Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott, Cole Palmer, Angel Gomez, 𝗦𝗶𝗴𝗍𝗂. All players who in the 12 months since that tournament have been, to use the Andy Townsend expression, in and around the full England setup. And if you did not watch one single minute of England at the Under-21 European Championships, let me tell you right now, it's my professional measured opinion, right? They were fucking brilliant. The primary setup was, of all things, just a standard 4-4-2, but there was not really a first 11. More or less every single member of that squad was brought in and brought out across the course of the tournament. This was the 11 they started the semi-final against Israel with, and I'm going to focus on that game because it was probably their single best performance. And what should be jumping out at you immediately is that even though this is just your average sort of 4-4-2, loads of players here don't feel like they're in the right position, do they? Like James Garner at right back feels like a completely rogue shout, doesn't it? And Curtis Jones and Gomez in the middle doesn't feel like a midfield two. They're both much better like in a 3 or in a wide area or in a more attacking position. Emile Smith-Rowe as just an out-of-the-box left winger. Anthony Gordon and Morgan Gibbs-White, two attackers, yes, but not centre forwards. And the reason this looks so snooker-loopy, right, is because the positions in this England under-21 side were largely meaningless. It's not how they played when they were on the ball at all. It's just kind of like the defensive shape they went into when they lost it. Just to demonstrate what I mean, right? This is a heat map from one of those players across the course of the entire tournament, right? Would you like to hazard a guess who it belongs to? They do a lot of work in this sort of like right-hand half space, but they're over on the touchline, they're over on the left sometimes. They'll drop deep into the middle to help with the build-up. They'll come all the way back here and back there as well. Any guesses? That belongs to centre forward Morgan Gibbs-White. What about this one? Any guesses? Clearly they're playing on the right-hand side, spending a lot more time in the opposition half, but clearly licensed to move into the centre to get on the ball or even go all the way over to the left-hand side if they need to. Anybody? Anybody? It's right back James Garner. And there's like a mad story to tell about every single one of these players if you look at where they ended up across the course of the whole tournament. Like this is Emile Smith-Rowe, and he was, of course, out on the left-hand side. It's where he received the ball a lot. But also, he was trying to get on it in every single central area he could. Like, clearly, this was just a starting position for him. But the maddest one of all, right, this is the tournament heat map of literal player of the tournament, Anthony Gordon. If you're looking at this and kind of squinting to try and make it all out because it's so pale and so unconcentrated, there's virtually no consistent areas, right? He very rarely actually got on the ball. He wasn't really a key part of the build-up or the attack or the creation or anything like that. Anthony Gordon had more or less a free role to go wherever he wanted to finish off chances. And how that all ended up looking in reality was just sort of crazy because you'd have Emile Smith-Rowe starting on the left-hand side here but trying to come across and like play in this left half space, possibly even as a number 10. You get all the width then provided by Luke Thomas down the left-hand side. Cole Palmer would sort of want to come into this space here. Gibbs-White would feel free to drop out into these spaces here. The midfielders, they would push up as well. You had James Garner, who would come across and basically invert and sit as a number 6 with the two centre-backs. Colwill and 𝗕𝗫𝗏𝗏, who were both brilliant on the ball, sitting there, and they could sort of get this sort of 3-player triangle going, and you ended up with this absolutely nuts, really quite violent attacking shape. And it was just, honestly, like such a sight to behold in this tournament. Because if we just take this build up here and we stop it right there, okay? These are the starting positions of every player who is now involved in this attack. Like, that is wild. And the real eagle-eyed amongst you will be looking at this and looking at that and going, hang on, Adam, that doesn't actually line up with what you said at all here. You said the width was coming from the left back and James Garner would invert into the middle. And you're getting it now. You're starting to understand. It could be anything at any time, and they were fine with it all. The reason I've chosen to highlight that goal in particular is because I think more than anything else they scored in that tournament, it sums up what this England under-21 side was capable of doing. Because we start with the ball with Morgan Gibbs-White, your out-and-out centre-forward who's dropped into this half-space sort of pocket position where none of the centre-backs are going to go anywhere near him. Emile Smith-Rowe, who is, remember, the left winger in this scenario, he's come across into a central area but now runs further across Morgan Gibbs-White's own run so they can play this little 1-2 and open up this pocket of space. You can see from the body language of the left back that because Garner has come all the way up to fill this space, I've got no idea where 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗥𝗔 is in all this, by the way, because he's there. He can't then really commit to anything in the middle because he's got to keep an eye on that. And that means Emile Smith-Rowe, again, remember, the left winger, can now run happily between this centre-back, because he's none of his business, and the right-back, who has other things to worry about. Gibbs-White now controls it really well and drives forward, because it is about having the physical profile to play this brand of football, not just by being a clever nerd and moving around into different positions. He goes past his marker and rolls the ball back to Smith-Rowe, who is now in the right-hand half space. Can I stress again, he was playing on the left wing. This gives Emile Smith-Rowe an embarrassment of riches for who gets to finish this move off. And oh, look, there he is. Oh, there's 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗥𝗔, the right winger in this equation. He was just hanging out unmarked on the left-hand side, because of course he was. And what is so impressive about this goal, possibly even more than the movement required to create it, is that if you look at it here, I think all three of these passes lead to a goal. Like if he gets it back to Gibbs-White, he taps it in. I think the cut back to Gordon is a guaranteed goal. And if he can get it all the way across to 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗥𝗔, which he does, that's a tap in as well. Like, that's... you don't see that. You never see that. The third goal is like exactly the same, just a smaller, less eye-catching version of it. Like, these are the starting positions of all the players in this move. They get it to here, Harvey Elliott, who now feels like the centre-forward in this equation because he's the central attacking threat, pulls everybody out of the way. The cutback is to Cameron Archer, the actual centre-forward, and he lashes it home. And as for the first goal in this game, right, it's just a header in the box from across. The centre-forward heads it, and the right winger crosses it. So you'd think you can't really infer anything clever about that, can you? Well, Morgan Gibbs-White is the man who heads it. And Morgan Gibbs-White is tops 5'6". As 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗥𝗔 gets the ball ready to whip it into the box, there is not a single centre-forward in there. You could almost see the, like, Looney Tunes style question marks appearing above the heads of the defenders. But like everything else, this is deliberate and intelligent movement. Like Anthony Gordon's come all the way out here. He's never going to score a header from there, but he is stretching the defence. Emile Smith-Rowe is actually staying on the left-hand side, not drifting into the centre. He's not going to be able to do anything out there except stretch the defence. And because you've got these enormous gaps now between these three defenders, Morgan Gibbs-White just spots where to run, 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗥𝗔 drops the ball in that space, and he jumps and wins the header, despite his height. That's the fullback there, by the way, who has to come across and try and challenge for that ball. I've just looked that up, right? He's just shy of 6 foot. He's got nearly half a foot on Morgan Gibbs-White, and such is the movement from this England team and their understanding of space coached into them that doesn't matter. And as for what are they like off the ball, well, England missed a penalty in this game that they won as a result of this level of pressure against their opponents. They force them back onto their own goal line. They press in numbers. They press collectively. They press structurally as well. They do everything England did not do at the proper Euros. So this does beg the question of just, like, why? Like, why can an England side at one level be so adventurous, be so dynamic, be so energetic, be so intelligent, be so dangerous and fluid and exciting to watch, and then you take the step up to the senior team and they're two-dimensional, they're quite negative, they're predictable, they're all that stuff that we just had to sit through at the Euros? And the answer to that question is the same reason why I think 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗥𝗔 should get the job full-time. The reason you see such a difference between these two levels of the national side is because this crop of under-21 players represents the very leading edge of a complete overhaul the FA made to its entire youth development system dating back to about 2010. You may remember that was the year England were humiliated by Germany at the World Cup, but what people don't tend to remember is that 12 months prior, Germany humiliated England again in the final of that tournament, and a huge number of the players from that team went immediately into the senior side. Manuel Neuer, Mesut Ozil, Sami Khedira, they started both the final and the World Cup game, and there were several other members of that youth side in the German squad. And this was the wake-up call the FA needed to just completely tear up the rule book about how they were developing players from youth level all the way to the senior team and start again in a way that reflected modern football. And that project, if you haven't heard of it, is called England DNA. Like, Dan Ashworth was partly behind it. He's now at Man United. Gareth Southgate was involved, loads of other people. Basically just looking at like how football was changing and how England could develop the players that could adapt to that change over time. If you Google it, it's on the FA website. You can go and download the whole original presentation they did like 13 or 14 years ago. It talks about how players should be as good in possession as they are out of possession, how they should understand space and changes in game state, how they should be positionally flexible, there should be multiple things they're good at, they should be more well-rounded instead of just being good at crossing or good at heading or good at passing. It talks about high pressing, it talks about counter pressing, it talks about transitions, both winning the ball and losing it, and how players need to be able to read the game themselves and best exploit and defend those situations. And what does that sound exactly like to you? That England under-21 team. Favourite part about all of this, right, is it literally says in the presentation, this is not an overnight fix. We've been neglecting this. Things are going to get worse before they get better, but maybe in about 10 years you'll start to see this bearing fruit. And what happened? England got dumped out of the group stages at the next World Cup without winning a game. That was bad. And then got dumped out of the Euros by Iceland, which was somehow even worse. But then, 11 years after this proposal got approved, this England under-21 team, full of players who had come through academies with that England DNA model, went to a European Championship, beat every single team, played some of the most flexible, dynamic, exciting football you've ever seen, didn't concede a goal, and fucking won the whole tournament. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not expecting England to turn up against Iceland and Finland, and in the first game, 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗥𝗔 got them playing this mind-bending Carl's ball that's going to make everybody fall in love with football all over again. But I'll say this, right? 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗥𝗔 isn't a player who's come through the England DNA programme, but he is one of the first coaches. Like, Southgate helped set it up, yes, but he was removed from that fairly early on to go manage the national side. Carsley, on the other hand, has worked with these players at different levels. He is as much a product of this system as any of these footballers are. And I know, whenever the England manager's job comes up, everybody's like, oh, get Ancelotti in, get Klopp in, get Guardiola in. They're brilliant managers, and they are, but international football is not club football. It's a very different thing. You can't go and buy a profile to make a team work. You constantly have to know what you have at your disposal and get the most out of them. You constantly need to be balancing bringing players through for the next tournament whilst also having dependable stars. It's really, really different. And I don't know if you noticed this, but the best team at the last European Championships was Spain, and they had in charge their former under-21 coach who had worked with a lot of those players before. And I'd say this, right, if you're the kind of person who's found watching England under Southgate to be very tactically limited, very unambitious, very sort of two-dimensional, that's a product of what national football is. But Carsley's England, no guarantees it would go any further in tournaments or do any better, but it certainly would not look like that. Anyway, I'm going to stop now before I inevitably put the kiss of death on every single one of them. So if you have enjoyed this video, please do consider subscribing to us here on 442. We have got loads more Premier League stuff coming, and I promise to make the international break at least fairly interesting. So that little button there, that is your friend. and so could I too be. You get me on all the social medias at Adam Cleary, C-L-E-R-Y. The 442 socials are in the corner of the video. The latest issue of the magazine has beautiful Kylian Mbappe on the front cover, so if you see that anywhere, I don't have it to hand, please do pick that up. It's a good magazine time. And for those of you who have made it all the way to the end of this video, first off, thank you ever so much. It may be too late by the time you watch this, but if you have seen all the, I'm doing the Great North Run, and I have no legs or heart or lungs, and all that stuff, it's Sunday. It's the Sunday after this video goes out, which is mad, insane to me, quite frankly. And I just want to thank every single person who's chucked in a $5, a $10, some of you insanely more than that. We've hit like 3.5 grand before I even start. It might get to about 4 by the time I finish. So just an earnest, honest, heartfelt thank you. And if you haven't donated yet and you have got a couple of quid, the link will be in the comments somewhere. But just know I am incredibly nervous. It's going to really, really suck for me. But when the burn starts or the wall is hit, it will be the incredible generosity of 442 viewers that does push me through. And I mean that, genuinely. That is what will keep me going. So, thanks. But yes, until next time, comments or welcome. Please subscribe. This was 442. This is 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗥𝗔-𝗧𝗜𝗠𝗘 England. I am excited to see it if nobody else is. And yeah, I'll see you after the Finland game. And after the run. Oh, God. Bye.